And welcome to our candidate forum for Congressional District 18. When we started this planning about 2 months ago, there were actually 9 candidates in the race at the time, and we were kind of figuring out in this room where we would put everybody. But it turned out that wasn't too much of a problem. Since then, Carla Spaulding, who a lot of you probably met, decided to not participate in the primary and run as an independent. She is still in the race, though. And then Paul Spain, which I think most people know. Paul has decided to go south and run in cd18 instead of 18. And if you've been following what's going on with the redistricting, cd18 hasn't changed very much, but 21 and 22 got kind of smushed together. He's going to run in 21, which is the Palm Beach County part of the old 2 districts, everything except East Boca. And he'll get to, if he wins his primary, he'll get to run against Lois again. So that'll be a rematch. That leaves us with 7, 6 of which are here today. The 7th candidate, Noel Nipur, we haven't been able to reach to see if she would come. So 6 out of 7. And since having a Q&A with 6 candidates in an hour is kind of messy, actually, if we had everybody sitting up here, we decided to do a slightly different format today. And what we're going to do is we've sent the candidates a slate of questions, which we'd like them to address pretty much individually. And what the topics were is we want to know what their vision for the country is, what's the role of Congress in a post-Obama government. Well, I love to say that, post-Obama government. What's the experience that you bring to the job? Are there any specific proposals you'll pursue when you get to Congress? What committees would you like to be on, and what caucuses would you join? And then finally, the most important part of it is, why are you the best candidate to represent District 18? There'll be a little bit of time at the end for questions and answers, so hold it until then, until after all the candidates speak. Now, let me just say a couple words about the district before we start. There's a couple of handouts. One of them kind of just is a little snapshot of District 18. I'm not going to read all that. You can look at it yourself if you're interested in history of who ran and what the results were before. But in demographics, I'd just like to say that this is a Republican district. It's made up of all of St. Lucie County, all of Martin County, and the northern part of Palm Beach. And although the St. Lucie County part is heavily Democrat, it's D+10. Martin County is R+24, and the Palm Beach part is about R+3. So in total, put it all together, it's a slightly Republican district. 480,000 voters, 37% of those are Democrats, and it's a fairly low, as Palm Beach County goes, there's fewer minorities really in the district than you find elsewhere. The average age is about 54, and the average person who votes is about had been registered about 14 years. Now, at the bottom of that, if you look at it, if you're trying to figure out am I in CD18 or not, to my knowledge, they did not redistrict CD18. There might have been some tweaks, but I think the boundary is about the same. This kind of shows you how convoluted it is. If you live somewhere around West Palm Beach, you have to look real close to find out if you're in CD18 or not, or go to the website. But if you'd like to look at that in detail, I gave you a URL there. You go to sfgresearch.com. I won't read the whole thing, but you can go in there. It's an interactive map. It'll show you what the boundaries are. Okay. Now let's begin. We're going to do this in alphabetical order. So Carl Domino is going to be first. So let me just say a few words about Carl. Carl knows the value and reward of hard work and the gift of the American dream. He worked his way through college, earned a degree from Florida State. He completed active duty as a naval officer in Vietnam, and then earned his MBA from Harvard. Carl retired from the Navy as a commander in the U.S. Navy Reserve. He's built 2 businesses from scratch, creating more jobs and opportunity for his neighbors in Palm Beach Treasure Coast region. In 2002, Carl was elected to the Florida House of Representatives, where he served for 8 years, and is best known for his property tax reduction proposal called Portability, which enabled local homeowners to move to the newer properties without losing the property tax benefits of the home they left. Carl's a longtime resident of Jupiter, where he resides with his wife Sharon and 16-year-old twins Reagan and Mason. Carl wants to reduce the federal debt, reform the tax code, supports the Second Amendment, and reduce federal regulations, including repealing Obamacare. So please join me in applause for Carl Demmert.
Thank you, Fred, and thank you, members. They did give us, and Fred read them out. Hopefully my answer will sort of cover all those things, maybe not with specifics, but I heard there's going to be time for a little Q&A. I'm running as a constitutional conservative. I think that's important that you know what I mean by that, because that will be my guiding principle. That will be my litmus test for every vote I take if I'm honored to go to Congress. And by being a constitutional conservative, it's just not a slogan, it means something to me. One is, it means that original intent is what we should follow in our voting. And that was, of course, started by Antonin Scalia. I was fortunate enough in the last few years to spend 4 days with Antonin Scalia. And believe me, I know a lot about original intent. It's very important that we use that. Justice Scalia would also talk ad infinitum about probably the most important thing on his mind was separation of powers. He would emphasize to us, time and time and time, that every country around the world, Cuba, Russia, they all have a constitution, they all have a Bill of Rights, and if you read it, it sounds just like ours. But they don't have separation of powers. They have either a strong executive or judicial or legislation. Our strength as a society and what keeps us from tyranny is separation of powers, and that has disappeared. Well, it's disappeared completely under this administration. It's been going backwards for a long, long time. Thirdly, judges ought to interpret, not make the laws. If you read the 2 decisions on Obamacare, that was heavily violated. There's just no question in my mind. No question in my mind, the legislation was meant to do one thing, and Justice Roberts said it was meant to do another. And finally, federalism. And what do we mean about federalism? As everyone in this room knows, the 10th Amendment says it so well. Basically, there are certain powers in the Constitution, enumerated powers, given through the 3 branches of the federal government, and everything else is for the state. So, for example, whether you're for gay marriage or not, and I personally believe marriage between a man and a woman, that should have been decided at the state. That was the proper place to decide that. It should not have been a federal issue. So every vote I cast, that will be my litmus test. Does it work in that regard? Now, you're going to hear this afternoon, and probably going to hear until you're sick in the face, until August the 30th, what all the candidates are going to do for you. I've been in the legislature. I know how limited you can do. But they're going to talk about cutting taxes and creating jobs and fighting waste, fraud, and abuse and protecting the environment. And I'm going to talk about those things over the next few months, but I'm going to have a different point of view. I've done those things. I've done those things for you. Creating jobs, I was the legislator that helped bring the whole Scripps, Max Planck complex to District 18. It was District 83 when I was there in the legislature, and almost 1,000 high-paying jobs have helped with that. Protecting the environment, if you go over the bridge to Palm Beach Island, as Reed does all the time, Lake Worth Lagoon looks beautiful now. It didn't look so good 15 or 20 years ago. We got money for that. Lowering taxes, Fred mentioned. The biggest real tax cut the legislature has done in many of our lifetime is something called portability. It's saving people hundreds of millions of dollars every year. We can document the numbers. I developed that concept actually with the help of the Palm Beach Civic Association in 2003, and I had to fight 5 years, even with the Republican legislature, to get it on the ballot. But in January of 2008, it was on the ballot. 67% of people in South Florida, 64% of people in the state of Florida voted for portability, and every day someone is buying a house because they can now afford the taxes. And finally, we're going to fight waste, fraud, and abuse. I didn't win the fight, but you may have seen, in fact, I know you did, I wrote 37 letters to people like Charlie Criss and Lois Frankel and the people up in St. Lucie saying, do not put 1 penny of taxpayers' money in digital domain. Now, I didn't just wake up one day and say I was going to fight digital domain. I spent literally hours up in OTED's office looking at the applications and seeing what a fraud it was. I didn't win that fight, but the taxpayers were the losers, because in St. Lucie County, they have a $40 million tax bill they have to pay, bond they have to pay on every year, when that company went bankrupt shortly after it started. I will work in the legislature, if I'm up there, on things I know the best. I will also support national defense. I spent 20 years in the military, my dad 27 in the Marines. The number one purpose for the federal government is national defense, and we are weak. But I understand I'm not going to be elected to be commander-in-chief. That's basically the executive's role. But I will work on two things the most if I get on those committees. One is lowering taxes. We have a modified flat tax proposal and another proposal that will make taxes fair for everyone. We need to repatriate the funds from overseas. We've talked about that for 3 or 4 years. We need to make the tax rate competitive around the nation. We do not have to put big import tariffs on. If the tax rate were competitive around the world, businesses would be built here. If we get that 2.5 trillion back, businesses would be built here. And then even as large as that, and I will end here, is the burdensome regulation, both in our personal lives and in our business lives. I'm a small businessman. I have a business right up the road, and the interference from the federal government is beyond comprehension. I know a whole lot about the capital markets, and I will tell you they passed a bill, Barney Frank's, Dodd-Frank's bill. There's nothing in that bill that relates to the financial disaster of 2000 and 2009. I often ask student groups, do you know what conflict minerals are? Does anyone here know what a conflict mineral is?
We gotta wrap it up.
I gotta wrap it up. Bill Diamond knows what a conflict. Well, did that cause the Great Depression of 2008 and 2009? Absolutely not. But it's regulated in this bill. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Carl.
I know it's conflict.
I might have, I should have said this before. We are trying to hold each speaker to 6 minutes, and we do have a timer running because we need to get this done in an hour.
We're also trying to videotape.
We're also trying to video it from here, and so for the speakers that come up next, you don't have to stand behind here, but if you get too close to the camera, it won't look as good. Okay, our next candidate is Dr. Mark Freeman. Is Dr. Freeman here? All right. Dr. Freeman grew up in Springfield, Massachusetts, and attended the University of Massachusetts at Amherst, followed by Boston University Medical School. He's devoted his life to medicine and runs 5 Humana Medicare Advantage centers and a medical software company. Dr. Freeman entered the race making $1.2 million of campaign contributions himself. A veteran, Mark was a lieutenant commander in the Naval Reserve and is committed to improving health care for veterans. On his first foray running for office, he seeks to repeal Obamacare, secure our borders, energize our economy, and strengthen our national security. Dr. Mark Freeman.
Thank you all for being here, and I appreciate Carl very much, very much. So I'm Mark Freeman. I'm asking for your vote for Congressional District 18. I'm not a politician. I'm an outsider. I'm a doctor. Like yourself, had a belly full of Washington and all the fraud and waste and abuse going on there. Like yourself, I've had a belly full of career politicians and power couples like the Clintons. I'm a conservative Republican, strongly pro-life, strongly for Second Amendment rights. My wife and I grew up in the same neighborhood. Our families knew each other. We went to the same elementary school. We went to the same junior high school and high school. Went to the same college. Our roots could not go deeper. So my roots in America could not go deeper. I believe in the America where I was born and raised. An America that many of you can remember, but few of you can recognize today. That America must be the inspiration that we carry in our hearts as we fight to restore the Constitution to its rightful place of honor. For restoration must be what this campaign is about. We must restore the principle of achievement through hard work, the principle of accountability, the principle of honesty for fair dealing. We must restore the principle that the world's best hope lies in an American universality. We must restore the greatness of our past, even as we gaze to the greatness of our future. Here are my promises to you. Mark Freeman will fight to destroy radical Islam. Mark Freeman will protect our borders. Having been a Lieutenant Commander of the United States Naval Reserve, I'll take care of the veterans. As a doctor, I'll fight to repeal Obamacare. And I'll be laser focused on creating jobs in cd18. I'm the only candidate that will start their term with a unique understanding of medicine. I've been there, done that. I have a plan, a free enterprise plan. But it's not just a plan, I've done it for over 20 years, cutting costs by 1/3. So nothing is more important than repealing Obamacare and taking care of our veterans and our elderly. The economy of today has been bought with borrowed dollars from tomorrow. The Democrats and Obama have doubled our national debt at the expense of our hard-working middle class. Illegal immigrants are taking their jobs here at home, and corporations are sending their jobs overseas. As Obama makes one foreign policy blunder after another, leaving Iraq, allowing ISIS to arise, destabilizing Libya, and making a sham nuclear deal with the trustless Iranians that gives them $150 billion for state terrorism against Israel, there must be a day of reckoning. Because it is the manifest destiny of America to be the defender of Israel. This race here in cd18 is important nationally, so we must pick the right candidate. The healthcare issue is huge for everyone, not just Republicans. We need an outsider. We need someone who is not a career politician. We need someone who is not part of a power couple. The Democrats have already chosen their candidate. He has put in $1 million. The good news is that I have put in $1.2 million as my first contribution. I'm in this to win. A vote for Mark Freeman is a vote to regain this seat for Republicans. Now, we Republicans have today a chance to bring our hard-working middle class into our party. These middle class voters are angry and frustrated. We Republicans must make it clear to them that our principle is that a rising tide lifts all boats. But the principle of the Democrats and Obama is to care only for themselves. And that has run our country down. But not the spirit of the American people, which is the greatest spirit the world has ever known. That spirit goes forward, and we Republicans carry that spirit. With that spirit, we Republicans will rally the nation, and the nation will rally to us, and we will win in November. Thank you. God bless you, and God bless America.
Thank you, Dr. Freeman. Next we have someone I'm sure most of the folks in the club know, Rick Cozell. A local resident for 25 years, Rick is a Jupiter High School graduate who obtained a degree in business administration from Wake Forest and started a small marine services business in northern Palm Beach. Later he returned to school, earned a law degree from Georgetown University Law Center in Washington. While at Georgetown, Rick served as a law clerk to the ranking Republican member of the Senate Judiciary Committee. He later served in a similar role for Senator George Lemieux and then for Senator Tom Coburn. And he was counselor to a member of an administrative court in cases involving federal regulation of small business. Locally, he has been involved with many community organizations, including Place of Hope, the PBC Land Development Regulation Advisory Board, the Heritage Foundation, the James Madison Institute, and the Republican National Lawyers Association. Rick is also a past president of this club. And Rick supports lower taxes and regulations, local control of education, a strong national defense, and limiting the power of government. Rick Cozell.
Good afternoon, everybody. That's the impact of federal regulation. It gets you tongue-tied even thinking about it. It's great to be with you. Let me just say, by the way, I think it's noteworthy that we're having this debate here today. You know, for those of us that have been a part of this club for a long time, everybody knows that we've been at Bear Lakes for as long as most of us can remember, at least 5 years for me, longer for many of us. And when you think about the change in venue, it would be easy to think about a change in the club. But you come out for an important event like this, and you remember that what makes this club unique is not the venue and it's not the food, it's the people, it's the cause, it's the ability to affect change. So thank you for putting this on, Fran and Fred, and great job with it. I'm running for Congress because when I woke up yesterday morning at 5:30 and I turned on the TV, I saw the same thing that we've seen far too many times recently. It's been far too common to wake up and to see another horrible attack by those murderous thugs on innocent civilians, or to read an article about working people being crushed in the Obama economy, or to see a press release about the president trampling the Constitution to advance his own ideological worldview. The time for change is now. Our children are suffering. I grew up here in this community. I'm the father of a baby girl. I built a little marine services business to get my family on its feet and be able to afford to go back to law school and become a business attorney. My community is very important to me, as is this great country, and I'm running to try to protect it. My campaign is about a few things, and I think my background as it relates to those things is important. It's a big part of why I'm running. Number one, I'm a believer in the founding principle of this country that Congress, the presidency, the Senate, all of it, should be about service. It should be about a citizen legislature in the case of Congress. People that build their private sector lives, that raise their families, that go to serve, to represent the community they love and they know, and then to come home and to live out their private lives in private. That shouldn't be a unique thing about one candidate in this race, but there are many candidates in this race with no ties to the community. This is an important seat. The Democrat has no ties to this community. He's from Miami. He read a poll that says this is a good place to run for Congress, and so he announced he's going to spend 7 figures of his own money. He's going to come up here. He's going to study the polls and see what the popular positions are to take, and he's going to try to buy this race. I don't think that's right. I believe we need people that know the community, that have lived here and grown up here and care about it because it's their home. And that's me. Number two, my campaign is about opportunity. I have been very blessed in my life to live the American dream. I was the first person in my family to have the chance to go to college because my parents worked their whole lives to be able to afford to send me. I was able to go to law school, but only after building a god-awful little business that I spent 3 years of my life in the water, in the Loxahatchee River, in mud up to my knees, trying to avoid being attacked by alligators, having manatee encounters, which at close range terrifies you to the end of the world. I've had all these great opportunities in my life and the chance to build a small business. And working people in this country right now are being crushed. They're trying to do the same thing. They're trying to build a life for their family. And they're being crushed in an economy where new business creation is as slow as it's ever been, where we're at a stagnant 2% GDP growth, half of the rate that we should be growing our economy at. That's unacceptable. So my campaign is about the things that I lived as a business owner: tax reform, regulatory reform, healthcare reform. Not just broad sweeping phrases about those things. It's become easy to run for Congress and pound the table and talk in these catchphrases, but if you go to my website right now, you'll find plans for all of those issues. I believe if we're going to really move this country forward, we need people that have lived these issues, we need people that have a clear vision for how to move the country forward, and we need people that have experience that informs their ability to do those things. And when it comes to getting this country working and this economy working for working families, I think it's deeply important that we have somebody that has literally laid in bed at night watching the ceiling fan turn and trying to figure out how they're going to make payroll the next day. That's a critical part of knowing these issues, not just to read about them, but to have lived them. The other thing my campaign is about is opportunity for our children is secondary in one sense, isn't it? If our country isn't safe and secure from the threats that are coming at us from overseas and landing here on our doorstep. And so my campaign is about the principle of peace through strength. This president has set the world on fire with a lack of leadership, and it is an outrage, and it's time that we do better. It's time that we stand with our allies, Israel, who this president has turned his back on, and it's time that our enemies know once again that if you threaten the security of the United States, the wrath of God will descend upon you. And we've gotten away from that, and that's unacceptable. I have been very blessed in this campaign. There are a number of our top national security experts that have come out and have joined me and have endorsed me in this race because they're a believer that we need people that get it and are committed to it, not just in the catchphrases, but to deeply understanding the tough issues that we face and who have shown a commitment to actually affecting change and to moving this country forward. I've been very fortunate to have some great names come together. Our leading critic of the Iran deal has endorsed me. His name is Ilan Berman. The head of Newt Gingrich's national security team in the 2012 presidential election has endorsed me. We've got a great group of people coming together. The time is now to effect change, and it's going to take something different. Not more of the same. Not people that memorize taglines and go on the campaign trail with a 5-minute memorized stump speech. We need people that have lived it. We need people that get it, and we need people that are not afraid to put forth real ideas for real reform and to fight with everything they've got to change this country. And that's why I'm running. There's going to be a day not too long from now where my 18-month-old baby girl is going to be 18, and she's going to be thinking about starting her own family. And when she goes out on her own, I want to know that I looked her in the eye, that I can look her in the eye, and that I can promise her that I've done everything that I can do to make sure that the future generations in this country have the same blessings and the same opportunities that past generations have been so blessed to have, myself included. I would be very grateful for your votes on August 30th. I look forward to earning your support over the course of this campaign, and I would be delighted to speak with anyone in person about any specific questions you might have. Thank you all very, very much.
Ooh, look at that.
Great time, Rick. Thank you.
Good job, yeah.
All right, for our next speaker, we have Staff Sergeant Brian Mast. Growing up in western Michigan, Staff Sergeant Brian Mast enlisted in the military after high school in 1999. For 12 years, he served in the U.S. Army, including time with the Joint Special Operations Command as a bomb disposal expert, where he was on the front lines against radical Islam, finding and disarming improvised explosive devices. While on his last deployment in Afghanistan, he suffered catastrophic injuries, resulting in the loss of both his legs, and was awarded the Bronze Star, the Army Commendation Medal for Valor, the Purple Heart, and the Defense Meritorious Service Medal. Throughout his long rehabilitation, he provided his expertise to the National Nuclear Security Administration, the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms, and the Department of Homeland Security, and recently donned the uniform of the Israeli Defense Forces. Throughout his moving to Florida after his retirement in 2012, he's currently working on a Harvard degree and would like to continue his service to our country as a U.S. Congressman. He'd like to repeal Obamacare, strengthen our support for Israel, stop the implementation of the Iran nuclear deal, and oppose the lifting of the Cuban embargo. Brian Mast.
I guess I've got nothing left to say. You covered it all. No, you know, people always ask me in earnest, they'll say, Brian, what in the world made you want to run for Congress? And I do tell people, I remember very specifically the moment that I actually decided I was going to pursue Congress as a part of my future. And it was as I was laying in a bed up in Walter Reed Army Medical Center after being injured while serving in Afghanistan. And I was talking to my wife and my 6-month-old son at the time. He was present right there. And I was telling my wife, I didn't know how I personally could go through life and think that the best example that I had ever set for that little boy was now something that was going to be in my past. I didn't know how I could go through life and think that the best defense that I'd ever given our country is now something that was behind me. And that's where I came to the conclusion that ultimately, for the best defense that I give our country to be something that's in front of me, that it was going to be on a new battlefield. It was going to be on the battlefield of Washington, D.C. And I honestly believe that this is going to be a more important fight than any fight that I had ever been a part of previously. But that was my job. It was my job to go out onto the battlefield and disarm bombs. It was my job to work calmly and purposefully and walk towards the danger that everybody else wanted to run away from. And I think that's an important experience in and of itself, because that's experiencing commitment, and that's experiencing courage. And I think that's one of the things that's most desperately needed in Washington, D.C. today, is commitment and courage. It's something that's lacking by so many of our representatives up there. But it's literally experience in what has been my life's work. I am the only candidate in this race that has an expertise in counterterrorism. I'm the only candidate in this race that has experience in combating the kind of evil that we just saw yesterday in Brussels, that we've seen at the Boston Marathon, that we've seen in San Bernardino, that we've seen in Fort Hood, Texas, that we've seen in hundreds of places around the world. That has been my life's work. It was as a bomb technician in our highest level of military special operations. It was after that working with the National Nuclear Security Administration to safeguard our country against nuclear terrorism. And after that, teaching classes for the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms on homemade explosives and post-blast analysis. And after that, safeguarding our transportation infrastructure as an explosive specialist underneath the Department of Homeland Security and protecting our homeland from those exact dangers that we saw implemented yesterday. And after that, standing alongside our great friend and ally Israel as a volunteer with the Israeli military. That's my experience. My experience, it's fighting for you, and it's fighting for you with the commitment to give the last beat of my heart in service to this place that I love more than anything. I think that's what America needs today. It needs some fight, and it needs some fighters. You know, we have a country that's being sold by the far left on this idea that everybody today is a victim, and somehow the federal government is going to swoop in and save all of us from whatever it is that we're a victim of. But it's the federal government that's really burdening so many of us. It's the federal government that's burdening us with excessive taxes. It's the federal government that's layering us with year after year of deficits that we can't sustain. It's the federal government that's eroding our liberty to let our kids, or to as families, choose where our children can go to school, or the liberty to protect ourselves and to protect our families. It's our federal government that's eroding so many of these liberties. It's our federal government that's wasting so many tax dollars. And that's the work of our hands. That's the fruits of our labor that they're out there wasting on these programs. And for me personally, I believe that it's the role of Congress today that in this moment and every moment going forward, that we take a look at what President Obama has done and say that we need to look ahead and do everything that we can to defeat Hillary Clinton, to defeat Bernie Sanders, that we do everything that we can to restore the idea that power rests with the states, that we do everything that we can to make sure that we reform our Department of Veterans Affairs and make sure those veterans get the care that they deserve and that they earn, that we do everything that we can to make sure that every single dollar is accounted for as though it comes out of our own pocket, that we do everything that we can to get rid of this crippling debt that's destroying our country, that we do everything that we can to make sure that our retirement programs are in place, are structured so that they can last for generations to come. These are the things that we have to most importantly focus on. And for me, ideologically speaking, I think it's most important that as members of Congress we show in action that we believe and we recognize that it's the people that made the government and not the other way around. And that has to be our example. I'll tell you, for me, the #1 policy proposal that I'm going to pursue as a freshman member of Congress is going to be to reform the Department of Veterans Affairs. That's the reality. It's that our veterans need to be treated with the care that they can get, care at any Department of Veterans Affairs facility that they want, that they can get care at any private doctor or private provider that they wish, and that they receive that care that they deserve and that they've earned in their willingness to give the last beat of their heart in service to this place and every other person in this room and every other person in our community and in this country. And to accomplish that, it's my goal to be made a member of the House Veterans Committee and to be a part of the House Veterans Caucus. That's a caucus that I'd love to be a part of. And if not, then to be a part of the House Armed Services Committee. Or if not that, then to be a part of the House Transportation and Infrastructure, so that I can work to make sure that the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers has the resources they need to make sure we don't have these discharges into Lake Okeechobee. Now I'll tell you, just in closing, that I learned to serve this country from every one of you that served, and from every person and every friend that I lost on our theaters of war. I've lost 67 close friends to date. And not one of those friends left this place because they were doing what was best for themselves. They left this place because they were serving this country without regard for gain and without regard for sacrifice. And that's how I'm going to serve you every single day as your member of Congress. So I thank you.
Thank you, Mike. Our next speaker has been to our club quite a lot. She's a 30-year resident of Martin County. Rebecca Negron has a BS degree in nursing from Indiana Wesleyan University and has practiced as a registered nurse in the field of obstetrics for 15 years. Having served on the Martin County School Board since 2012, she was reelected without opposition in 2014. And Rebecca, as you probably know, is married to Senate President Designate Joe Negron. Rebecca opposes Common Core, would like to balance the budget, simplify the tax code, repeal excessive regulations, and replace Obamacare, as well as defund Planned Parenthood and fix the VA. Rebecca Negron.
First, I would like to thank you for this opportunity to speak. And second, I would like to thank all of the people who helped me gather petitions, because we qualified yesterday. We got all the petitions we needed to qualify for the ballot. So I want to thank all the people who helped me collect petitions. To me, this is America, the place where life and liberty dwell. And clubs like this, and in organizations like the Kiwanis Club, the Boys and Girls Club, the Harbor Branch, the Humane Society, Place of Hope, CareNet, and our places of worship. All of these represent people coming together to make our communities and America great. To me, this should be America's moment, when we show the world what it means to lead. The problem today is we are letting the world lead us. ISIS, the Iran nuclear deal, foreign trade, all while a former Secretary of State still cannot explain why it was okay to have classified emails on an unsecured server in her basement. I grew up in a tight-knit family, grounded in faith and dedicated to serving others. Those three things, faith, family, and community, are the backbone of our country. But it was my mom, who struggled with a fatal heart problem for years without complaint, who taught me a valuable lesson about what any of us should do when we are challenged. Don't give up. Never give up. To this day, I have never shied away from doing what's right, fixing what's wrong, and making things work. That's why, as a nurse for 15 years, I took on a system that was driving us to spend more time on paperwork than patient care. It's why, as a school board member, I have fought policies that foster underachievement, underpays teachers, and is pushing a curriculum that beats up on American principles and heroes, that is essentially teaching our children to believe in little and trust in nothing. So when Washington ignores us and refuses to do the job we elected them to do, they're going to hear from us. I am running for Congress to change the way they do business. The current power structure in Washington does not work. Every person elected to office by their constituents deserves a place at the table. And waiting until a crisis occurs, passing bills in the middle of the night that no one has the chance to read, is not the way to govern. We must stop spending money we do not have. Because Washington cannot regulate itself, we must pass a balanced budget amendment. We cannot keep piling debt onto the backs of our children, a debt they are going to never be able to repay. And to me, in order for us to survive and thrive, we must do everything we can to strengthen our economy. Our children need careers, not minimum wage jobs. Washington cannot create jobs, but can nurture an environment that makes job creation possible. We must start treating our veterans with the care that they need and the respect they deserve. And we absolutely must repair a foreign policy that refuses to support our friends and stand tall against our enemies, because tyranny thrives on weakness. I once heard a nickname I like to this day, and it was Reb, not short for Rebecca, but it was short for rebel. Maybe that's because I have no problem doing what's right. I have no problem speaking up when others turn the other way, and I make no apology for standing up for our country. I am a problem-solving mom, and I will not waver when it comes to standing up for our constitutional rights. And I have a message for the President today. We will not tolerate any executive orders that tamper with, negotiate with, or give away our Second Amendment rights or any of our rights. My mom was right. Don't give up. I'm Rebecca Negron, and I would be honored to have your support.
Thank you, Rebecca. And our last speaker, and certainly not least, is Rick Roth. Rick is a 37-year Wellington resident who grew up in Belgrade. He's the president of the 5,000-acre Roth Farms east of Belgrade, and has been producing vegetables and sugarcane there since 1976. Although never holding a public office, Rick has been involved in politics for years, including fundraising for former Governor Bob Martinez. And he's held a variety of leadership positions with the Florida Farm Bureau Federation and the Florida Fruit and Vegetable Association. And he's on the board of the Sugarcane Growers Cooperative of Florida. Rick Roth.
Good afternoon, folks. I'm a member of the RAC of Palm Beach County, so when I look out over this audience, I see a lot of people I know. Of course, I love my old friend Mark Foley, one of the best congressmen we've had serving this area. And so I see a lot of friends. I see Reed Moore. Reed probably maybe even remembers me as a young kid going to Tallahassee with Farm Bureau. I am probably the most unlikely person to be standing up here, so I want you to do me a little favor. I want you to play along with me a little bit. I want you to see yourself standing up here, because that's what's going on here. I've been involved, just like you guys, trying to be a good citizen, write a campaign contribution check every once in a while, support great candidates, vet candidates, raise money, always looking for the candidate that can do the job without being babysitted, whether it's your county commissioner or state representative or whatever. The bottom line, folks, I woke up a year ago and said, I want to do more for my country. I'm at a point in my life, after being a farmer for 40 years, running my small business for 30. I don't know if you know what that means. That means my father passed away at a young age. So at 33, I took over the family business. I am so proud of the fact that I was born in Good Samaritan Hospital, but I was raised in the Glades. And you know what you know about the Glades? And what you know about sugar farming and vegetable farming in the Glades? Almost everything you know is not true. We've learned this in this most recent election. I think we're learning that the media never has been about telling the truth. They've always had an agenda, and it may just be as simple as just trying to sell newspapers. They're not interested in telling you what happened in the meeting. They want to sensationalize it. A lot of times the heading in the article doesn't match the storyline because the editor wanted to sensationalize the story. So I think you're waking up, folks. I think we're waking up. And what we see happening in this country is a movement. And I want to be part of that movement. So a year ago, I started thinking, what could I do? I was going to run for state house, and I got talked out of it. You know why? Because Democrats vote for Democrats no matter what. So where I live in Wellington, I could not run. Hired the best consultant I could find and decided to run for State House and got talked out of it. You need to run for Congress. Patrick Murphy's seat is an open seat. It's more conservative than where you live. It's really a rural district. And here's the funniest part about it. Some of the biggest issues going on in my district are having to do with Lake Okeechobee. And while most of the people that are running for this office, like Rebecca, who I respect greatly, we've run into each other many times, and I've watched her give presentations. I've watched Brian Mast give presentations. Very respectful of him. He does a great job. Rick Cozell, Rick, you're amazing, especially since I knew you as a club president. You really are coming a long way. But the bottom line is, folks, I've been fighting the fight. I'm not talking about fighting a couple of years. I have fought my whole adult life for my very right to farm. Let me tell you about one guy that's 80 years old, and we appointed him on our co-op board. His name is Noel Shapiro. Noel Shapiro's father got ran out of Poland by the Nazis. They went to Cuba. And then he got ran out of Cuba. So his family has gotten run out of their country twice by what's going on. And today we're sitting here watching a primary and a known socialist is running for the President of the United States. Folks, it's time to wake up. Let me tell you a 20-year-old byline. I went to a Promise Keepers movement 20 years ago. And what did I learn in that Promise Keepers movement? That most men are takers and most women are givers. And if you really want to be a good husband and a good father, you need to be a giver too. You need to be respectful of your wife. You need to love your kids. And the best thing you can do for your kids is to love your wife. So I took my wife out to dinner whether we were getting along or not. Every Saturday night we went out to dinner because I figured it out. A good marriage comes from having a bad marriage and sticking it out. 37 years I've been married. And how I can figure out that my wife is still married to me, I have not a clue. Anybody more hard-headed than a farmer? Raise your hand if you think. So the bottom line is this, folks. I'm trying to get you guys excited about you got to do more than write a check. I'm looking for people that want to join a movement called Take Back Our Country. We want good government. Folks, I've been around long enough to know what good government looks like. Mark Foley, we had to talk him out of run for president in '96 because he remembers the phone call with George Cooper because he got elected to State House in '90, he got elected to State Senate in '92, and he got elected to Congress in '94. And we said, Mark, slow down. But we know what good people are like. We know what I know what the Contract America did. I know that Newt Gingrich was a much better leader than what the media said he was because he was a lightning rod. So what I'm looking for, that's my time? I'm looking for people that want to be part of a movement of information. Folks, we are not the party of sit down and shut up, we'll take care of you. We're the party of information. And people are asking all over the world, is America done? Is it over? Can we truly govern ourselves? And the answer is, yes, we can, but it's up to you. It's not up to the media, it's not up to the government, and it's not up to me as a politician that gets elected. It's up to you to hold us accountable. Don't blame the darkness when things get worse. Blame the light. We got to do more. Thank you.
Thank you, Rick. And thank you to all the speakers. I got to say, I've been watching congressional candidates come and go for quite a few years now, and it takes so much to run for office that it's just amazing that people are willing to do that, stand up and fight for their country. And so please give a round of applause to all of you.